plan faces a tougher climb in the Senate. National Economic Council Director Brian Deese making the case for the legislation on Fox News Sunday.
This bill is going to be the biggest cost-cutting bill for working class and American families in decades in this country. And it's going to go at costs that are persistent problems for the American people in their lives.
Before the House approved it, Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy assailed the measure in an 8-hour speech.
More than 2,000 pages, and the Democrats were only allowing, once they put that manager's amendment in, 10 minutes on each side to debate. And the amount of heckling that they would try to do to stop me from being able to talk. But what we really found, Maria, with one-party rule in 1 year, this big government socialism isn't working.
McCarthy on Fox's Sunday Morning Futures with Maria Bartiromo. America is listening to Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Protesters hitting the streets of Kenosha, Wisconsin to denounce the acquittal of Kyle Rittenhouse.
A minor carrying a weapon, a loaded weapon, unlicensed. He doesn't even have a damn license to drive a car. We're outraged about this, and we're going to turn our pain into power.
The 18-year-old claimed he fatally shot 2 people and wounded another during a violent protest last year after they attacked him. Fox's Tucker Carlson has an exclusive interview with Rittenhouse set to air Monday night. With boosters now approved for all 3 COVID vaccines, could the definition of fully vaccinated soon change?
2 doses of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines and the single Johnson & Johnson shot remain the standard for now. But the president's chief medical advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, said on ABC's This Week, only the science will bring a change.
When we're boosting people, what we're doing, following them, we're going to see what the durability of that protection is.
Although not the case nationally, Connecticut and New Mexico leaders are advocating fully vaccinated to include booster doses. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Tens of thousands of people marching through Brussels to protest reinforced COVID-19 restrictions imposed by the Belgian government. Hundreds threw objects at police, set fires, and smashed cars. Police responded with tear gas and water cannons. Tiger Woods teases golf fans about another possible comeback.
The Twitter video lasts just 3 seconds. Tiger takes one swing with the wedge and says, making progress. Tiger has been sidelined since a February automotive accident in Los Angeles. He suffered multiple fractures in his right leg, his ankle, and his foot. The video also shows Tiger wearing a black compression sleeve on that right leg. The 45-year-old Woods has previously said his rehab has been more painful than anything he has ever experienced. Tiger has not played competitively in nearly a year. Bob Mortale, Fox News.
I'm Steve Rappaport, and this is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Afre, my name is Kiona Rivera, student at the University of Guam and recent recipient of the G is for Giving Scholarship. This holiday season, I'm encouraging our island community to support the G is for Giving campaign. Your generous contribution not only support programs at the university, but also helps students like me reach our academic goals. For more information on how you can help shape the future leaders of our island, call the UOG Endowment Foundation at 671-735-2957 or visit their website at give.uog.edu.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Here we are again at the very beginning of the best time of the week. First hour on a Monday. That means we got a whole week of Tall Tales ahead of us. Just one problem this week. No Tall Tales. No Tall Tales on Thursday. It's for a good cause, for Thanksgiving Day. People get together with their families. So Jose and I will endure it, but it, as usual, will be a struggle. But here we are today. Nothing but sunshine here for the next 3 days. Okay, so we've been through the Second Amendment, the United States Constitution, some of my most favorite reading of all times, and we go from there straight to the card. As you were, boy, I've been gone so long I forgot how to do it. We go from there straight to Zemi Ikotny. And we got 3 editorials today. Candidates back in the game again. So here's the Daily News. Boy, the Daily News has just got one that just really grabs you by the eyeballs. Our view, help fight against Wuhan virus by getting a booster shot. No! Such controversial stuff. Such inspiring rhetoric.
Is this a press release?
Yeah. Yeah, press release from Crystal Paco San Augustine and Janela Carrera. There isn't really much to say about it, except what we've been saying for months and months and months, that the vaccine is not an effective means of not contracting the virus. I just saw something online the other day. One jurisdiction where more of those infected had the vaccine than those that didn't. But it's the right thing to say. If you want to be on the right side of the governor, you should wear your mask at all times. If you go swimming, wear your mask. And I'm not talking about a mask and snorkel. If you go swimming, wear your mask. If you go to masks and you and your wife are walking up to partake of the host, make sure you stay 6 feet behind your wife.
Safety first.
Safety first. It's the same old thing. So, you know, this mind control device is prevalent enough in the community as it is, Daily News, without you being the media distributor of the same thing. So no blue star for you today.
Denied.
And then we've got the Post. And the Post, yeah, they had a good one yesterday, but not today. Friday. Across 2 spending packages being offered by the federal government, Guam could stand to receive anywhere from $1.5 billion to $2 billion. That's yet another game-changing round of federally funded relief for our island, which remains gripped by a depressed economy caused by Wuhan virus. This is the kind of injection that has prevented many businesses from shutting down, many families from losing their homes, and indeed the government of Guam from laying off any of its workers, even when there wasn't any work for them to do. During a recent meeting of the Guam Economic Development Authority Board, when discussing the approval of pandemic business grants, members confirmed that because of the congressional aid, some local companies are recording even more revenue than before the pandemic began. Yeah, a little rent seeking goes a long way.
Certain financial institutions.
Yeah. Others, however, especially those that rely on visitor spending in their establishments, continue to suffer. They said, underscoring a need to consider offering targeted additional help to those who need it most rather than simply giving more financial aid to more people. We hope there's similar critical thinking. I thought we had the monopoly on that here, Jose, about spending the latest round of pandemic relief funds. President Joe Biden, which prompts me to say, let's go, Brandon. $1.2 trillion infrastructure package includes $193 million for Guam to improve roads, bridges, clean water infrastructure, the local mass transit system, and more. It was encouraging to hear Governor Lulian Guerrero connect this spending initiative with local jobs. Telling reporters in a media conference last week that her aim is to get on-island workers to fill positions needed for all the expected construction projects resulting from the bill. But exponentially more will be done through the Build Back Better Act, a $1.75 trillion spending bill that has passed the House and is under consideration by the Senate. According to Delegate Michael San Nicolas, the island can expect anywhere from $1.5 billion to $1.75 billion from these measures alone. Contributing to that estimated total are $345 million for critical infrastructure, including construction of a new public hospital, $25 million for new affordable housing programs, such as a down payment assistance, $31 million in additional community development block grants, which can be used for parks, pools, and gyms, $30 billion in technical assistance for climate change programs, an extension of the Supplemental Security Income Program to Guam, a pool of $140 million for the territories in Medicaid funding matching funds, and $17% local matching rate for the program, access to $1 billion in disability and senior housing assistance, a share of $320 million in total funding for territories for highways, $300 million to help the separatists on the island achieve independence from the United States. No, it's funny. There's no money at all coming for that. This just isn't fair. This is not right. Okay, the rest of the editorial is more of the same. Yeah, it's fine. It's a wonderful thing that all of that money is going to come flowing in. But I always have this really bad habit of asking this really bad question: who's going to pay for it? And the first answer is taxpayers of the United States. The second answer is everyone who lives in the dollar economy. Because the more dollars you crank out that are nothing but paper press money, the less those dollars are worth. And it's often been said that inflation is the cruelest tax of all. That dollar that you used to be able to take to the dollar store is only going to buy you 50 cents worth. No. Okay, so that's the two mainstream media editorials. Now here comes Troy's editorial in Candid. And Troy's editorial raises a lot of questions that I'm going to ponder as I stumble through this editorial. And the title of the editorial is, Whose Land Is This Island? Now, if I were to stop right there, different people would have different answers as to whose land is this island. Some people would, without hesitation, say, it's the Chamorros Island. And the reason, of course, well, we're the indigenous people. We were here first. Others would say, well, whose island is it? I guess if you're talking about fee simple title to real property, the island belongs to a lot of different property owners. There are, of course, a lot of other different answers to that question as to whose island is this anyhow. I'm looking for a paper here that I probably forgot to bring along. Yeah, it's probably still at my house. Tomorrow. Okay, so here's what Troy says. There was a moment in the gubernatorial campaign of 2018 that wrangled many debates and tested many consciences. Quote, "This is my island, Ray. I'm from here, Ray." Then candidate Lou Leon Guerrero exclaimed in a pocket meeting, taunting then Lieutenant Governor Ray Tenorio. The implication was simple. She is Chamorro. He is not. So the implication continues, how could he care for Guam more than she? For good or for bad, and truly that's not what this article is about, she was sending a message to Chamorro voters that she would indeed protect their interests, promote their progress, which is a message that different candidates try to project on various levels. We'll get to Hope Cristobal a little bit later on.
There's a caveat to her message, unless you're in the womb.
Yeah, of course. Then it's different. So for good or for bad, as you were 3 years later in introspect, what could have been a seminal moment seems more like the use of racial warfare and 2 sentences to fool Chamorros into voting for her. She could have proven during her term that she never meant to pit Chamorros against non-Chamorros. She'll leave that to the separatists, Michael Bavacqua and Melvin Dora, Melvin Wampat, people like that. But instead, to fight for issues where Chamorros have been wronged, like the 1950 taking of their land without just compensation. Now, again, that's one we can argue about. Was there just compensation? Was there not just compensation? Or is the definition of just compensation for some people, I didn't want them to take my land. I don't care how much money they gave me for it. Or no matter how much they gave me at the time, it isn't enough. We've seen the figure trotted out by one of Troy's confidants here. They only gave my grandmother 6 cents a square meter for the land. Well, maybe at that time, that was the fair market. Maybe that was just compensation for the land. Maybe that's what it was worth. Maybe not. 6 cents a square meter today is not the same thing as 6 cents a square meter 71 years ago. Since January of this year, after learning from the Secretary of the Navy, Kenneth Brathwaite, that his agency intended to declare hundreds of acres wrongfully taken in Fidian as excess, Governor Leon Guerrero has had every opportunity to get that land back into the hands of its original landowners. Now, I got to stop there and talk about that for a moment. So, as a matter of law, just wipe everything off the slate except as a matter of law. When a government, certainly the United States government, condemns real property and takes fee simple title, there's nothing left over for the pre-condemnation owners. They have no more interest in that land than Jose and I do. A sentimental interest, perhaps some affection for the land, some memory, some sadness, but as a matter of law, the pre-condemnation owner has no interest in the land whatsoever when the United States government takes the property by fee simple. As far as I know, every use of eminent domain on this island by the United States government resulted in the United States government taking the land in fee simple. So for good or for bad, for better or for worse, once that happened, the pre-condemnation owner had no interest in the land. So when you're using a phrase like getting the land back, doesn't fit the law as we all understand the law. There's nothing to get back. And we know from the way it works, when the United States government has land that it no longer needs, that it took by eminent domain, first thing it does is ask if any other federal agency would like to have that land. Classic example, what used to be called NAVFAC up on the northwest corner of the island, used to be called Page Communications. I think we found out later on that it was an anti-submarine installation out there on what we now call Retidian Point. And when the United States government said, no, we don't need that anymore, we've got different technology now, some of the stuff we needed, another example, we don't need the Coast Artillery anymore. So the Retidian Point, NAVFAC, when the United States government said anybody else wanted, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service said, yeah, we'll take it. And that's what it is now, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That's the way it works. If no agency of the United States government wants it, then the United States government makes it available to state and local governments. But always with the caveat that you use it for a public purpose. Now we know we've got a really serious real estate problem with the Northern Wastewater Treatment Plant, because that was land that the United States government held as excess, in effect gave it to the government of Guam in two different conveyances. And it's complicated, but there is an explanation that says that there was a merger by deed. And because of the doctrine of merger by deed, the United States government no longer has its reversionary interest in the land. The reversionary interest meaning if the land is not used for a public purpose, then the land goes back to the United States government. So that's the way it's supposed to work. I mean, that's the way it's worked every other place that I'm familiar with. We did something different here, and we got all fired up. Hey, we got to give the land back to the original owners. Notwithstanding the long explanation that I gave you, it was politically very, very wise to run on that. Let's give the land back to the original owners. And once again, the C word comes into play here, because the pre-condemnation owners were 99% people of the Chamorro extraction. So this had great political value to those who would advance the let's give the land back to the original owners cause. So the government of Guam created something called the Ancestral Lands Commission. We don't do a very good job with commissions, and the Ancestral Lands Commission is on a par with the rest. So the Ancestral Lands Commission is empowered to take that land, or one step, the government of Guam quit claims the land to the Ancestral Lands Commission, which takes whatever interest the government of Guam has in it. I don't think it's fee simple because there's a reversionary interest back to the United States government. But the Ancestral Lands Commission is empowered to take that land, investigate, and determine who the pre-condemnation owners were, and then deed that land to the pre-condemnation owners. Now, in a sense, when the land is deeded to the pre-condemnation owners, who loses an interest in the land? Everybody else. Everybody else does, because if it weren't for that, if it weren't for the Ancestral Lands Commission conveyance, then the title to the land would remain in the government of Guam for use as a public purpose, building hospitals, building schools, building roads. I went through the sad story of the airport access road. Now, we gave away the land that we needed to widen that road. Now we don't have it. So that story gets repeated over and over again. So by giving the land back to the pre-condemnation owners, that's someone who has no colorable right to the real property at law, in a sense, we're taking an interest in that land away from everybody else. It's a rather complicated wealth redistribution device. If you analyze it, if you apply some critical thinking to it and analyze what's really going on, that's what's really happening. Okay, so back to Troy's editorial here. She could have proven during her term, that's the governor, that she never meant to pit Chamorros against non-Chamorros, but instead to fight for issues where Chamorros have been wrong, like the 1950 taking of their land without just compensation. Now, I've remarked on this program myself that from my study of the way the naval government engaged in eminent domain, it probably was pretty unjust. After August 1st, 1950, when the District Court of Guam was open and the rule of law prevailed and the constitutional provision was adopted, you can't take the land without paying just compensation. After that, no. So any post-1950 land doesn't come into this unjust taking, except, well, you know, we didn't really like it and we wanted to keep the land, and then you get into the Tanana and Tun Jose. Well, you know, Tanana and Tun Jose were not really sophisticated. They didn't understand all of these things. And I can understand that. I can sympathize with it, but I don't know that that's something that is ordinarily recognized in the law of eminent domain. The pre-1950, yeah, you got something to argue about there. But Troy is saying that Chamorros have been wrong, like the 1950 taking of their land without just compensation. So Troy is kind of rittenhousing this thing. If the land was taken by eminent domain, it was unjust. Since January of this year, after learning from Secretary of the Navy Kenneth Brathwaite that his agency intended to declare hundreds of acres of wrongfully taken land in Fidian as excess, Governor Leon Guerrero has had every opportunity to get that land back into the hands of its original landowners. Well, that's good if you come down on one side of the proposition that I just provided. If you come down on the other side, that's not so good. Instead, she wants to take 102 acres of the land facing Route 15 on the way to Pocket, lease it from the Navy for 100 years, build a medical campus on it, and not give a cent to the original landowners. Well, going back to my long drawn-out story here, that's the way it's ordinarily done. So the Troy position then is the governor should say, thanks, but no thanks, Admiral. How about deeding the property to us in fee simple? Because we want to give it away. And then give it to the heirs of the 18 pre-condemnation owners, and then let them sell it at today's prices. We can buy it from them at today's prices and build our hospital on it. Where does the money come from to pay today's prices? From you and me, from every taxpayer on Guam. Yeah, okay, so let's take a short break here, and I'll come back to Fidian Point.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Afre, my name is Kiona Rivera, student at the University of Guam and recent recipient of the G is for Giving Scholarship. This holiday season, I'm encouraging our island community to support the G is for Giving campaign. Your generous contribution not only support programs at the university, but also helps students like me reach our academic goals. For more information on how you can help shape the future leaders of our island, call the UOG Endowment Foundation at 671-735-2957 or visit their website at give.uog.edu.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So the Troy editorial here is saying that the governor, if the governor didn't want to engage in racial warfare, etc., what she ought to do then is tell the admiral, we don't want a lease. We want the fee title to that land, or as close to that as you can give us, because we want to give it back to the heirs of 18 families that owned the property before the property was taken by eminent domain. And then those people can sell it back to us, and we'll build a hospital on it. And, of course, they're not going to sell it to us for 1950 prices. They're going to sell it to us for 2021 prices. And, of course, you know, when you're selling whatever it is, the willingness of the buyer to buy and the necessity for the purchase really plays into the price of what it is you're buying. If you need to buy a used car, and you hitchhike into the used car lot, and the salesman comes out and says, boy, am I glad you're here. I really need a car. I had to hitchhike over here. If you can't sell me a car today, I won't be able to get to work tomorrow, and I'll be in a world of hurt because I got to have a car. How much is this one over here? You look inside the salesman's head, and the salesman says, it's listed at $1,000. I could probably get $1,200 or $1,300 from this guy because he's so desperate. I can let you have it for $1,500. Oh, that's too much. I only got $1,300. Well, I'm going to have to go talk to my boss, but I'll let me see what I can. Yeah. On the other hand, if you come walking into the used car, or if you have your buddy drop you off in his Tesla, park in front, drop you off in his from his Tesla, you get out and you walk around with kind of a disdainful look on your face. And when the salesman comes over and says, hey, I got a 2-year-old Ford here that's only got 20,000 miles on it. Are you interested? You look at it and you say, how many got killed in this wreck? And you do everything. No. You know, the only way I would buy that car is if you sell me an invisible ray gun so my neighbors couldn't see what I'm driving. I'd be ashamed. You know, you're conditioning the seller to come down, okay? Now, we've already told everybody and his brother we want that property because we want to build a hospital out there. So the folks that, if Troy has his way, the folks that are representing the heirs of the 18, however many hundreds of them there may be right now, are going to say, you want to build a hospital? Give me the key to your piggy bank and we'll see if we can work something out. That is the Troy position. Now, I know a lot of people would come down on that side. A lot of people would not come down on that side. This is what we call critical thinking. We don't allow our feelings and our prejudgments and our sentiment to get in the way of the thought process. We go through the thought process and then we decide what's the best way to proceed. So that's where we are. And Troy says instead she wants to take 102 acres of land facing Route 15, lease it from the Navy for 100 years, build a medical campus on it, and not give a cent to the original landowners who were not justly compensated when the land was taken through eminent domain in 1950. Well, here's another approach. Then let's get appraisers and accountants out there and look at what the land was worth in 1950, what would have been just compensation in 1950. Figure that amount out. Take it up to present value, pay the market rate of interest, and give that amount of money to the pre-condemnation owners. Wouldn't that be fair? And in the process, you wouldn't be taking money from everybody else to build the hospital that we're all going to use. In April, Speaker Therese Tetlahi was the first to expose the governor's plan and question it. She held an oversight hearing where she reminded the members and executives of the Guam Ancestral Lands Commission about a series of laws that detail the government's obligation and processing in returning excess lands to ancestral claimants or their heirs of the free condemnation owners. Ms. Leon Guerrero, as a freshman senator in 1995, actually voted for the pioneer statute among these, Public Law 23-23, or the Guam Land Claims Act. Maybe the governor is caught up in the trappings of power. Oh, no. Troy? Yeah, I could see where you were going with it, and I could see some alternatives, and I could see a thought process here. But to say maybe the governor's caught up in the trappings of power? My gosh, where did he come up with that?
How dare he?
Probably one of those days he was sitting in a roadblock down there in Marine Corps Drive trying to get somewhere. Maybe there's something she wants to do with Oka Point. She certainly doesn't want anything like a home for foster children out there in the Oka Point area. We know that from the campaign, don't we?
Wasn't there a condition when that land was given? Is that the rumor? That it was supposed to be, Oka Point area was supposed to be used for the hospital?
When Frank D. Paris gave that land to the government of Guam, it was actually used for, it's supposed to be a nursing home. And his intent was, his idea was, I'm going to give it to you so you can use it for a hospital. But it was not what we would call a condition precedent, or excuse me, a condition subsequent in the conveyance. You can deed property, say, and Blackacre to the government of Guam so long as the property is used as a hospital, and then to whoever.
But it has to be language in the deed.
It has to be language in the conveyance, yeah. But, you know, once again, a lot of times we pay more attention to what ought to be done. You know, the land ought to be given back to the original landowners, right? Well, anyhow, Troy, you know, I was right with you here. I could follow you along, right, until you accuse the governor of maybe being caught up in the trappings of power. Well, I don't know. And then he goes on to say, all we know is that, yes, it's critical we build a new hospital. And we do believe that in her heart of hearts, they don't call her the Red Queen for nothing. Off with their heads. Yeah. Let's see. And we do believe in her heart of hearts from the time she voted for the Guam Land Claims Act, and probably way before that, to the time she exclaimed, quote, "This is my island, Ray," that she meant it indeed. Something has changed in our governor. Perhaps the voices of the people of the land she wants to take can help Lulian Guerrero to remember why people wanted her to be governor and remind her she is a governor because of the people. Wow. Got some patriotic music we can play in the background here, Jose. Those voices were heard Thursday night when Ms. Leanne Guerrero held another oversight hearing on, Ms. Terlaje. We applaud the speaker for her tenacity, courage, and obvious preparation she did for this hearing. Using her lawyerly skill, no one could avoid the questions, even though she tried multiple times to not answer the questions. Taking together all that we have reported, all of the FOIA documents that we requested, and put them together with the testimonies and evidence presented at Thursday's hearing, one clear message emerges. Governor, you must stop. Build a medical campus somewhere else. Return the land. Now, you know, the stories in the paper say that heirs of the 18 showed up. Of course. I mean, does it take a clinical psychologist to figure those who would benefit by the give the land back to the original landowners approach? Does it take a clinical psychologist to figure out the psychology of that one? I don't think so. Okay, Troy goes on. Below, we provide a compilation of the pleas 5 of the landowners make to the governor. Listen closely, Governor. The appeal from an old woman who leases a tiny lot from the Chamorro Land Trust while her father has a claim to more than 1 million square meters of land you want to take with just compensation is heartbreaking. Think of how much that 1 million square meters would be if that lady could sell it. We want to continue exposing the obvious moral and legal violations. See this story through until still living original landowners and their heirs receive the deeds of their lands. Speaker Terlaje asked many good questions Thursday night that raised even more questions. One shocking revelation is that the governor already placed into motion a plan to take over 100 acres just for her so-called Guam Medical Complex. To give you an idea of just how much this land is, consider that Oka Point is about 35 acres and that the land that GRMC is on is about 7 acres. Why would the governor want to take 102 acres for 3 buildings and a parking lot? Either governor was not telling the truth or one of her advisors lied to her. Oh, that really is a stretch. When publicly stated that the ancestral landowners had already received compensation as required by law, despite our FOIA and repeated requests to the governor, she still has not produced even an iota of the research she claims. Well, I'm on her for that. You get a Sunshine Law request, you got to turn over those papers. I don't want to hear any of this personnel matters BS. Throughout the hearing, Mr. Lai asked administration land officials of the whereabouts of a very important document that appears to be missing. In the Navy Secretary's letters to the governor, he references an October 5, 2020 letter she sent to him that purportedly outlines requests she made about the disposition of label lands on Guam. That letter was neither provided to the Speaker nor to candidate in response to our Freedom of Information Act request for such documents. It's critical the legislature and the people know exactly what the governor wrote in this letter. It appears, based on the Secretary of the Navy's response to the governor's letter, that the governor may have requested more land than we were made to believe. So why is this letter missing? This is suspicious. This is bad. This is good, Troy. Keep going on this one. The governor now has a very clear moral and legal mandate to stop all negotiations with Navy for a lease or license. In fact, the Navy also has a clear moral and legal mandate to stop all negotiations. I wonder why. With the governor. The Navy is entitled to deal with the governor at arm's length. He isn't necessary for him to do a background check on the governor. Nothing out of the ordinary is being asked in this case. In the identical manner that millions of square meters of ancestral lands were conveyed to Gov Guam by Congress, then pursuant to our ancestral land laws conveyed to land claimants, the same must happen in this case. Candid will continue its investigative reporting on this story. The Navy has responded to a series of questions we asked Naval Facilities Engineering Command last week. We are grateful for their cooperation. We'll publish their response and hope that more facts come to light. The Commander and the Secretary of the Navy report these lands as access not to the governor, but to the United States Congress, so the lands may be returned. Listen closely, Governor. This isn't just your island. It's their island. It's our island, too. Does that mean it's my island, too?
From California to... Oh, wait.
Yeah, different island. Okay, now here's a little clinker that I threw in last time. We got a couple callers on the line. I appreciate their patience. I'm really looking forward to chatting with both Bob Kelly and Repeat. But here's a clinker I threw in last time, and that is that a leasehold interest for greater than a year creates an estate in the land. So if the United States government enters into a 100-year lease with the government of Guam, then that leasehold interest, according to what Troy tells us here, according to that local law, that leasehold interest has to be surrendered to the Ancestral Lands Commission. And then it's divided amongst the heirs of the 18, who can then sublease or assign their lease to the government of Guam and pull big bucks out of it. That's the law of real property. Okay, let's take a short break here, and I'm going to come back to Bob Kelly and then to Repeat.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Okay, so here we go. We've been talking about Eagles Field, eminent domain, a 100-year lease, the law of eminent domain, give the land back to the original owners, etc. Let's find out what Bob Kelly. Bob Kelly is a smart guy, and he's always really sharp on hard issues. So go for it, Bob.
Okay, this is kind of a different part of the same puzzle you're working on, and I haven't been able to find a good answer. And maybe you have the answer, or we can together go look for it. My understanding, and this goes back to the 90s when I used to work in government many years ago, my understanding when we cleared the area for the old Guam Memorial Hospital, Hospital Point, that was donated by the Perez family with a provision in it that it had to be used for a medical facility. Now, this weekend, I read in the paper where they're looking at GITA trying to lease it out for a hotel or something. And this gets into two interesting conflicts. It was never given to the government with that. There was a provision that had to be a medical center, or so that was back at that time in the 90s. Maybe there's been a change. And if that's the case, why are we not putting the medical center there, which is a place that's got 3 separate entrances? You can come down at least 3 separate ways into it. It's closer to the existing hospital and the doctors that are working there. I'm just a little bit confused on why we want to go to this new point. And if we do, that then opens up all these other questions you've been talking about. Why are we ignoring Hospital Point? And is there a provision, or can that be turned into a tourism spot?
Here we go, Bob. I did talk about this just before the break. My understanding is that when Frank Paris, who owned much of that part of Tamuning, gave that land to the government of Guam, it was his wish that it be used for a medical facility. It started out as a nurses training school, became a hospital, but his wish was not part of the conveyance, not part of the deed in plain language. It's possible to deed property on a condition subsequent language, like to the government of Guam in fee simple, so long as the government uses the land for a hospital, but if the government stops using it as a hospital. But he didn't do that. So the government of Guam owns the land.
So we were misinformed back in the 90s, I guess.
Yeah.
We were told it had to be used for medical because that was the basis of it being given to Gov Guam. At least, and I remember that fairly clearly because we talked about what all possible uses it could be, and we couldn't do anything because it had been set aside to be a medical center by the people donating the land.
Different people will see different sets of facts as restricting their activity. Some people might say, if that's what Frank Paris wanted, I'm not going to be technical on it. I'm not going to disobey his wish. But my understanding is that the actual conveyance does not have that conditional language in it. Let's go to the second part of your question. The Hospital Point area makes so much more sense than the Eagles Field. I mean, it's hard to get to Eagles Field for a football game because there's only 2 ways you can get there. You can come out Route 10 and turn at Price Elementary School, that junction, or you can come at it from what's the road that cuts across through Laddie Heights? That
Macheche.
way. Say again?
Macheche Road.
Yeah.
Is that Macheche or Bello?
No, it's Macheche. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, it is Macheche. Okay.
Yeah, that's the only way you can get to Route 15, which is not a very good road to start with. So, it's like building Yankee Stadium on a gravel road. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, here's a little bit of some of the whispering that's going on, Bob. And that is, if you really want to understand this decision, you've got to look at some of the transactions in the immediate area of Eagle Field. Because the whispering is that some of that land has changed hands. Much of that land has changed hands recently. So if you buy Blackacre out on Route 15, say for $100 a square meter now, 5 years from now when there's a new medical facility built across the street from Blackacre, how much is Blackacre going to be worth?
And you're breaking.
Yeah, this is, this is some of the whispering that's going on that explains the desire to build out there in Route 15 because speculators are already gobbling up the land adjacent to where the medical center is going to be, which will become very valuable once that medical center is erected. I only know that as a whisper campaign. I don't think it even rises to the level of a rumor, but It's something that people are talking about.
Well, I don't know. I think I'm just amazed that we aren't discussing Hospital Point at all, because there's plenty of room to put a beautiful medical center there, a beautiful hospital, a medical arts building as a place that doctors could work in. Plus, the doctors' offices in Tamuning are all near there anyway. I mean, what happens to the doctors and the diagnostic centers and the stuff that's in the Tamuning area if the hospital ends up moving 8 miles away?
That's why we're looking for all this federal money for mass transit. We'll have doctor buses.
But this is where you want your doctors. A lot of the doctors live in the Tamuning area to get to the hospital in 10 minutes if there's an emergency. I mean, I think we're just creating a whole lot more problems, and I don't know why there's not any discussion. We're discussing about the previous landowners of the land at Eagles Field, but nobody's talking about why aren't we going to Hospital Point.
Well, it's the old warm tummy, tight anal sphincter test, Bob. It really warms people's tummy to talk about, politicians' tummies to talk about giving land back to the original landowners so they can become overnight millionaires. But where you put the hospital, that just is not very exciting. You know, it's really, really important, but it doesn't warm people's tummies. That's my explanation.
Okay, well, I'm going to go back and state that I really think we all need to be looking at Hospital Point. Unless there's a serious reason to not go there, that should be the prime location, because that is where a hospital's been. That's where the utilities are. That's got easier access. It's more centralized. There's a whole lot of reasons to do that.
Think of the message. Think of the message that it sends to visitors to the island to look up from San Vitores Boulevard and see this beautiful hospital up on the hill.
Well, maybe if we had that and we really could bring a few more key doctors in with a regional medical center nearby in that hospital there, maybe we could do a little bit of medical tourism on Guam.
Sounds good, doesn't it? Sounds like a winner.
That's something I think that should be discussed by our legislature. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. Thanks for taking my call.
Okay. Thanks for calling, Bob.
Bye-bye.
And we got a break for the halftime show. Before we do, I'm going to put the blue star on Troy's editorial, and I'll explain why after the halftime show as I introduce a repeater to the show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
This is a Fox News Alert. I'm Steve Rappaport. Chaos at a Christmas parade in Wisconsin. Authorities in suburban Milwaukee say an SUV sped through barriers at a Christmas parade, striking people marching along the route. Waukesha Police Chief Daniel Thompson.
The vehicle struck more than 20 individuals. Some of the individuals were children, and there were some fatalities as a result of this incident.
City officials say 5 people were killed and more than 40 injured. More from reporter Sam Kramer with Fox 6 Milwaukee.
We talked to one woman who was standing as a dance team of girls between
9 and 15 years old, was coming by when that red SUV comes barreling through. She estimated about 20 of those girls hit and injured straight down to the ground. And she said their first immediate reaction was for silence, processing what had just happened, but then it was followed by chaos. Everyone, either running in to help or running to make sure other people weren't in the way as best they could.
Police have a person of interest in custody. President Biden's Build Back Better plan heads for the Senate after clearing the House. Democrat John Tester of Montana on NBC's Meet the Press says he expects some changes to the legislation.
Let's negotiate and let's come up with a bill that lowers costs for families and cuts taxes and gets things done to help move this economy forward so we can stay the premier power in the world. China wants to supplant us. If we don't tend to business here, they could do that.
The roughly $2 trillion bill does not have Republican support. A push at the gas pumps.
The average price of regular grade gasoline is $3.49, same as it was 2 weeks ago. Behind this average no change, there were some downs outside the West Coast, but in the West Coast some jumps, and they offset each other. For example, in California, the price moved up 8 cents to $4.67 per gallon.
Oil analyst Trilby Lundberg monitors gas prices across the country. America is listening to Fox News.
Howdy, Chili's is serving y'all some Texas-sized family meal, because everything's bigger in Texas. Enjoy full racks of Chili's world-famous baby back ribs, margarita chicken, savory shrimp, beef fajita, smoked jalapeno sausages, mashed potatoes, and corn on the cob. Man, this meal's bigger than Dale's, but it ain't breaking the bank. Chili's has Texas-sized family meals for just $45 to feed your crew of 3 to 6 folks. For your youngins, just add $5 for a kid's meal. Chili's, more life and bigger meals happen here.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Arguments coming up in the trial of 3 white men who chased and killed a black man jogging through their neighborhood in southern Georgia.
The 3 defendants on trial here are Travis McMichael, his father Greg, as well as William Roddy Bryan, faced a long list of charges, including felony murder. And come Monday, the prosecution will get yet another opportunity to lay out why a conviction is warranted in this case, with 3 hours to present closing arguments. After that, counsel for the defendants will each have 1 hour, which puts the defense at 3 hours total as well. Now, there's a lot of speculation about when jury deliberations will begin. The concern is how close that will be to the Thanksgiving holiday this Thursday.
Fox's Charles Watson. The Supreme Court will release its first opinions of the new term this week.
Justices will not be on the bench, but instead issue opinions to the Supreme Court website. That is something that has been done as a pandemic precaution since last year. It is not known which cases will be decided, but the justices have fast-tracked challenges to a unique Texas law banning most abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy. Arguments earlier this month centered on the ability of federal courts to review the law.
Fox's Jared Halpern in Washington. Who won the weekend box office wars?
Ghostbusters Afterlife, opening above industry expectations.
I just wish you'd get into some trouble.
There's still time.
Selling $44 million worth of tickets. The weekend's other high-profile opening, King Richard, didn't fare nearly as well.
I got these 2 great tennis players. All we need is a club.
The drama starring Will Smith as the father of Serena and Venus Williams, finishing 4th on the weekend charts with 5.7 million in ticket sales. Eternals, number 2 with 10.8 million, and Clifford, the big red dog, in 3rd place, earning just over 8 million. Kathleen Maloney, Fox News.
I'm Steve Rappaport, and this is Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
Okay, so here we are back to, we're still doing Demi Ekotny because we had the third editorial today, which was from Candid News, and Troy did a fine job here. Got the blue star. There it is. That's Troy's 5th blue star. And I'll explain once again why. And I don't agree with every position that Troy takes, everything that he advances. But he explained what he wanted to write about. He gave you some things to think about. He was critical of people who needed to be criticized. And he has a call to action. So it's got all the elements of a good editorial. And you can write an editorial. It's possible to write an editorial that I finish reading and I say, no, that is not the way to do it. But still get the blue star because we're looking for good editorials here, not just folks that agree with the host. That doesn't hurt, of course. but this was good. It really gave me a lot to chew on, and anything that makes for good talk radio can't be all bad. Okay, so we've stirred up some pretty good callers here. We've got Repeat first in the on deck circle. And then we have a caller who says he doesn't care where we build the hospital so long as there is a drive-through cafeteria as part of the building. See if you can figure out who that is. And then third in the on-deck circle is Pete Scrow, who wants to talk about Hospital Point. So let's start out with a caller who has been known to repeat from time to time. Right, Pete? Right, Pete?
Yes, I'm here, sir.
Yeah, you've been known to repeat from time to time, correct?
Yes, I have, How are you doing today, Uncle Bob?
Well, it's a brand new week, a Monday. I'm doing fine.
All right, great to hear that. I agree with you that the editorial, hit a lot of buttons, but my big issue is, journalism responsibility. There is a difference between someone who has an opinion and writes an opinion versus someone who's trying to report on a story, and a basic understanding of the issues is a requirement, because in this case, I see the harm that this causes is there's giving false hope to a lot of people whose this issue has been very sore for them for decades. And, you know, who should give them false hope? No one should give them false hope. And that's just my problem with the some of the assertions in the editorial.
Okay. False hope such as?
Such as, you know, you pointed out very astutely, and I'm glad that, you know, you break things down analytically and without having any bias towards anything. And you talked about the, I guess, viability of an actual claim by the previous landowners, and to me, I've thought about this a long time too, and it's a very difficult battle to win, and I think it's practically impossible for the landowners, you know, just being objective about it, and this kind of gives them false hope.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So you're saying that what the editorial does is take something that is at best an expectancy, and it probably isn't even that, and converts it into something that looks like something that could be reduced to judgment, and that just isn't the way it is, correct?
Correct. You know, that's you have to be responsible when you put these things out, especially when you have a platform like Troy does. And he's said it himself that he's not always responsible, but he should be. You know, he should be responsible, because you're going to end up giving a lot of people false hope, and it's going to cause more pain. It's going to open old wounds. If it were me, I'd tell them, you know, basta, forget about it, because that's being honest with them. Okay,
well, once again, this goes to the efficacy of Troy's editorial. It's gotten people to come out. It's gotten people to engage in critical thinking instead of listening, figuring out what the melody is, and start humming it themselves as though they thought of it themselves. Correct, Pete?
Yeah. And I've talked to some people who are previous landowners, not just in that area, but also other places. People felt that they were victimized by Dwight Look and other things. And when I actually looked into their cases, you know, they'll tell you everything that supports their side of the story. But then when you look into the background and the information, you find out that there were certain things that they left out that are critical that does not vote in their favor.
And that's why we can make a good living, right, Pete? We help people find out what actually happened, find out the truth, and sometimes we actually have to go in front of the guy with a black robe who makes these decisions.
Yeah. And, you know, a lot of times people are running on just what they've been told by their grandparents. And yeah, it's you know, who's going to doubt their grandparents? But, you know, when you actually find the facts and the information and the history and the background, it's a whole different story, and people get their hearts broken. And I just think that this editorial is going to get a lot of people's hopes up and set them up just for more heartbreak.
Okay, well, I hear exactly what you're saying, and you've hit a couple of buttons yourself. So thanks for calling, Pete.
All right, thanks, Bob.
So long. Yeah. So, Pete,
we still talking about the Troy Torres, the Gannett News article, or
yeah,
or the okay,
yeah. Okay, so next it's pretty early for supper time, but we're going to go to supper time anyhow. Let's have the proper accompanying music here, Jose. There we go. Chow call, Jack.
Good afternoon there, Bob. How you doing?
Doing great.
Yeah, you're correct about I don't care where the hospital goes, just as long as there's a drive-through, or you know, unless a red Jeep passes through and makes a drive-through there. But actually, you don't care.
Well, if it's a red Jeep, it's got to be a red Jeep from the get-go, Jack.
From the get-go. But I prefer it at hospital point, like was mentioned earlier, and I would like to throw in a few facts here. Old Man Paris did testify down at the legislature about Oka Point. I forgot what year he went there, but I do remember the front page. I remember him giving testimony on why he donated that land there and what it specifically was supposed to be used for, and nobody challenged him on that. So if you want to look for evidence, I forgot what legislative hearing it was, but he did testify to that point and what was the purpose for the Oka Point.
I'm going to jump,
I do remember
Jack, I'm going to jump in here, okay?
Sure.
Everything you say could be true, and it wouldn't make any difference, because when you're talking about conveyances of land, what someone intended, what he testified, the fact that he had 20 bishops swearing on his behalf don't make any difference. It's the language of the conveyance that controls.
And the language of the convenience at that time. So
there's only one time, when you convey real property, the ordinary method is a deed. The deed is reduced to writing. The the conveyor signs it in front of a notary public, and that's the conveyance. It's then recorded in the proper repository, and it then becomes notice to the whole world. And regardless of what you were thinking when you signed it or what you wanted.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There was Notary Public back in 70. I can't remember.
Well,
but
this goes back before 1970, Jack. Guam Memorial Hospital was built in 1952.
Yeah. 1952.
52.
Yeah, there you go. So I don't know if there was Notary Public back then. But,
Jack, slow down a little bit. All these things that you don't know, I'm prepared to tell you. If you read if you read the Organic Act, there is a specific section in the Organic Act that talks about the function of a notary public. That's why we had a notary public after 1950, because it's in the Organic Act that civil officers could be set up to do that function. So there were notaries public in 1952. Whatever that conveyance said is what controls the day. Now go ahead.
Yeah, so anyways, I lost track of what happened after that, but I do remember that to ease some feelings, it was conveyed to the Chamorro Land Trust, and then I don't know how they got back to Gita. And I do remember they weren't going to build anything on there because same problem with Adelup. They chased the children out of there because they found out the school was on a fault line. I think where the old hospital is also a fault line, and I don't know what happened to that, whether it's no longer a fault line or I have no idea. But that to find out that they're going to build a hotel there, or they're thinking of building a hotel there, I mean, that's another thing. But I understand what you're saying about the legal transfer of real estate property and things like that. And but yeah, I was kind of surprised when Old Man Paris did make that testimony that nobody bothered to object to it. And I was just wondering about that. What happened?
Well, let's speak hypothetically. Let's say that Frank D. Paris goes before the legislature, and he said, I gave the land that Guam Memorial Hospital is located on to the government of Guam. And when I gave it to the government of Guam, it was my intention that it be used as a hospital. And I told the governor of Guam in 1952, whose name I can't remember, that's what I wanted to do. There's nothing to challenge there, because everything he says could be true, but unfortunately not relevant.
Okay, I guess. But anyway, so how about the fault line? Was that true or not?
Well, as far as Adelup is concerned, the fault line was that Ricky wanted to put his governor's office there.
Yeah, I thought that they closed the school down there because of school was found out to be on a fault line, and that's the same reason why they wouldn't build a new hospital in Oka Point, was because that too was designated as a fault line. But I don't know. That's the last time I ever kept track of it. After that, now I find out it's in Gita's hand. I thought it was in Chamorro Land Trust hands. Oh well, the world keeps going, even though you're like me. I'm totally uninformed unless there's a new drive-through or drive being established in here.
Okay, drive-through Jack.
All right, Bob. Have a great day.
Thanks for calling. There we go, drive-through Jack. And now next we got Pete Scrow who wants to talk about Hospital Point. Tell us about Hospital Point, Pete.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Doing fine.
I just wanted to clarify a few points and then point out that you're absolutely right. I was Frank Paris's attorney in the 90s, and during that time, anything that I'm about to tell you is already a matter of public record. But there's a lot of misinformation going on that I think needs to be clarified. But I want to start by saying you're absolutely right that in that deed of conveyance that was given to Carlton Skinner, there is no condition that the property be used as a hospital. What happened is we actually interviewed Carlton Skinner. We got his affidavit because we knew that there was no judicial solution. So we looked at a legislative solution in the late 90s. And we worked with several senators at the time. And it was not for the purpose of trying to create a condition that the property would be used as a hospital, but it was an argument that the property should be given back to the Paris family on the basis that Mr. Paris never received the just compensation that he actually negotiated with Carlton Skinner. And this is all in an affidavit by Carlton Skinner that is filed with the legislature. What happened, Bob, is you may recall way back when the cement block plant where now the Guam Greyhound is, that was one of Mr. Paris's first businesses. He had all of that. He had all the land where Parisville is now that was undeveloped. And he also then had Oka Point that was totally undeveloped. He needed trucks. He needed a bunch of equipment to further his business, but he didn't have the capital to buy these trucks. So the deal that Carlton Skinner made with him is that he said, look, Frank, I don't have any money to give you for Oka Point, but I've been told by the Navy that I have a lot of surplus military equipment that you could use for your business that is going to be given to the government of Guam that I'll give you as fair compensation. Now, all of that equipment was actually in Saipan, and that's from trucks to jeeps to forklifts to you name it, anything that could help a business back then really succeed and grow fast. It's kind of a funny story, but there were 3 barges with all this equipment that was being brought to Guam, and one sank. So Mr. Paris didn't make a big thing out of it in getting the 2 barges instead of the 3 barges that was the negotiated fair market value. And there was never any replacement of that equipment. Mr. Paris really believed in his heart that place was to be a hospital for the people. He cared about the people. He actually wanted to develop Oka Point as part of his continuing growth of what we know as Parisville to be another residential community. So he wasn't out to sell it. It was never for sale. It was something that he was approached by then Governor Skinner at the time, and he did it. And again, you're right, there's no condition in the deed, but he basically did it because it was going to be a hospital. And for purposes of clarification of where the property lies now, the property is not owned by GITA. The property is still owned by the Chamorro Land Trust Commission legally. GITA is only mandated by law to manage it for the Chamorro Land Trust, and they actually get a fee for it. So I don't know what plans at all GITA has for it, but it's actually the property title, Bob, is in the Chamorro Land Trust.
Okay. Well, thanks for clarifying those points, Pete. So if there were an obligation running back to Frank Paris, then it would have to be characterized as a moral obligation, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And that was the approach we took, Bob, because we knew because of the statute of limitations that we wouldn't be able to file a claim in court on the basis that there wasn't sufficient just compensation. Too many years, as you know, had passed. So we looked at a political solution, and And Mr. Paris not only testified, other people testified. Carlton Skinner's affidavits were introduced, and we lost by one vote. It was just one senator's vote that prevented the lands from being conveyed back to the Paris family.
Okay, very interesting. Now, Pete, you know a little bit about building hospitals, correct?
I actually know quite a bit.
So you can have the option of saying, well, Bob, I got to do something really important, so I can't stay on the phone any longer as I pose this question to you. Is that fair? Here's the question. Where do you think we should build a new hospital?
You know, Bob, believe me, I'm not trying to avoid your question, because it's not as easy as you think it is, or it's not as easy as anybody thinks it is. And let me give you an example. When we were in the development stages of finding an investor to build a private hospital, what then became GRMC, before there was even an investor, all the investors, there was initially just two investors. And the two investors put some money in for purposes of determining where would be, you know, is it feasible, doing a feasibility study, where should it be located? And we actually hired a hospital location specialist that we flew into Guam, because you just can't build a hospital anywhere. There's various things that need to be considered. And when we were building GRMC, literally 9 parcels of property were looked at before the final decision was made of picking the parcel where it is now. And there's a variety of reasons for it. One is we definitely looked at cost. One was we looked at how much it would cost wherever you're going to build a hospital to get the property ready for the hospital. You need a lot of infrastructure. You need a lot of bandwidth. You need to have not old electric lines, but new electric lines, new water systems, and those things cost a lot of money if you have to start from scratch. So the reasons why that parcel in Dedito was picked too was because it minimized the cost. It actually saved about $90 million to build it there, because all of the infrastructure was already right there on the boundaries of the lot. That's one point. The other thing is there is a saying in the location of hospital business that's called the percentage degree of emergency response. And that all is factored in on the basis of population of any community, any municipality here in Guam, and the probability that there's going to be an emergency from one municipality to another. And because Dedito was the largest population, and Tamuning right next to it as the largest population, your probability of an emergency response is going to be much higher in the Tamuning and Dedito locations. Another thing that was factored in, and there's much more, Bob, but I'll just mention one more thing because I don't want to belabor the point, is that we also consulted with the military. Anderson Air Force Base, we even worked with the Air Force and ran test ambulance runs where we tested the time it took for an ambulance from Anderson front gate all the way to Naval Hospital. Then we timed it from the front gate of Naval Hospital to the site where you have GRMC. So there's so many different factors in determining where you got to build a hospital, what's the right place to build it. And I hope that helps give you some answer to your question.
It helps a lot. And starting out, I knew nothing. Now I know something. And Tamuning's starting to look better and better as my understanding grows, Pete.
Well, you know, one of the things I think to consider, Bob, about Tamuning is, you know, it's kind of a joke that we make here on Guam that if we can't find a parking spot in front of the post office in Agana, we then leave and come back later. And you know, as funny as that may sound, it's so true. And something that was learned in the GRMC experience is that you have about 92% of our doctors and physicians, their clinics are in Tamuning. And we had thought that there would be that every single local doctor would file for credentials to work at GRMC, but that didn't happen. And the reason it didn't happen is because they didn't want to drive from their clinic in Tamuning to Dededo. So when you think about Oka Point, your doctors are all here. Your doctors are all in Tamuning. A lot of them live here. And because we are federally designated as a physician shortage area, you got to give a lot of thought also to the physicians and how are they going to get there and respond to emergency situations. And I just think that's another argument why Oka Point is an excellent location.
Well, you shed a lot of light on that subject, Pete, and I'm really glad you called. Is there any other parting wisdom that you'd like to leave us with before you sign off?
Yeah, just one last thing. The last caller was absolutely right about the fault line. There was a lot of, throughout history, there's a lot of confusion if that fault line exists at the current hospital, GMH, or does it exist at Oka Point? It actually exists at Oka Point at the far, far right. It's actually a short fault that is right behind the Hilton Hotel. But engineering studies were done by Duenas and Associates years ago. And the studies have come out that you can still build on Oka Point so long as you don't build on the fault line. And, you know, I mean, it kind of makes sense. I mean, if you think about it, we're only 30-some miles long and what, 9, 12 miles wide? I mean, if there's an earthquake one place, you know, if it's a mile away, it's not going to make really that much of a difference. So I just wanted to raise that last point about the fault line.
I'm sure Drive-Through Jack is glad you did, Pete. So thank you very much for the call. Very enlightening. Thanks for calling.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Talk to you later. Okay, so let's head for Wrigley. There's no fault lines in Wrigley Field, I can tell you that. So we'll head for Wrigley Field for the 7th inning stretch.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field. That means we only got 2 more innings here for Tall Tales. I noticed that Troy has signed on and played on Facebook today. Troy, see what you caused? See all the trouble you caused? All of the conversations that sprang from your editorial? I hear what Repeat is saying. I wouldn't characterize what Pete is talking about, although he used the term false hope. I think I would perhaps, if I were going to do some characterization, I might talk in terms of a lack of realism when it approaches the hopes. And there's this huge con game that's been going on since the United States government first gave excess property back to the government of Guam. And the con game is that a pre-condemnation owner had a right to that property. And those lucky pre-condemnation owners that got that land got it as a matter of grace. It's an ex gratia payment. It's not a matter of right. So good for you. I mean, I'm glad that it happened. And full disclosure here, my wife and her siblings got some of that land out on the back road to Anderson too, and reaped some cash out of it. And I don't think we're going to give the cash back. But still, an objective look at the whole thing, the fact that you own real property that was later on taken in eminent domain by the United States government doesn't give you a right to anything. And the political realities of the situation made it very favorable for politicians to pander to those pre-condemnation owners, wrapping the whole thing in a sense of Chamorro nationalism. I want to do what's good for Chamorros. Chamorros lost their land. Let's give the land back to the original landowners, even though all the rest of you guys are going to have to pay for it. So, and then glad that Pete Scrow called in, because the conversation that Pete Scrow and I were having are the ones that I think we really should be having. We should put this, the pre-condemnation owners thing, that is a totally separate issue. We should be having a community discussion on where that hospital should go. And certainly, I was not persuaded from the get-go that Route 615 was the right place for it. And hearing Pete, who's been involved in citing a hospital, go into in a little bit more depth, I just don't see that there's a good faith argument that it ought to be on Route 15. And I may very well use the powers vested in me by the PICA Award from the Pacific Daily News to rule in that regard. Yeah.
That call reminded me of, remember Paul Harvey? And now the rest of the story.
Now you know the rest of the story. Yeah. My dad used to listen to Paul Harvey back that far, way back in the late 40s and in the early 50s. He used to sell, I think it was Maxwell House coffee. And his line was, Maxwell House coffee. It's a case of good judgment. I don't know why I remember that. Okay, let's take a look at the card here. First item on the card, Hope Cristobal versus the United States Marine Corps. And then we got a little bit more of the left versus Rittenhouse. And then holdover from last week, Turley versus Pencilneck, and a repeat of repeat versus repeat. So let's start out with Hope Cristobal. I got a short story here, and then I'm going to ask Jose for some sound effects. So keep your finger on the trigger there, Jose. So there's a story in the Daily News. If you're reading it online, try to look at the hard. If you can't get into the e-edition, try to look at the hard copy. This is what the hard copy looks like. There's a nice big picture of Hope Cristobal in the hard copy, and on the e-edition, that doesn't appear in the online edition, but the story is the same. Local activist group Proteji Latexan held a candlelight vigil at the cantonment gate at the Chalan-Careta intersection near Camp Blas Entrance Sunday. The vigil was to honor the human remains found at the construction site. The construction of the camp has turned up the remains of several indigenous ancestors who probably were there for hundreds of years. At the site, 7 more burials were recently uncovered, bringing in a total of 26 separate findings of human remains. Well, this area had previously been described as insignificant to history by military personnel. This is Rick Cruz and Joe Titano writing this story for you. Concerns of local activists that Magwak village, which was located there, was a highly important ancient settlement and is now home to what they say are sacred burial grounds. Protehi Latexian is a local direct action organization dedicated to raising awareness of Guam's local and environmental issues. Co-organizer Maria Hernandez May, and that's, that's not a statement. It's not Maria Hernandez May go downtown. I think her name used to be Maria Hernandez. Now it's Maria Hernandez May, but I got to check with Crystal Paco San Augustine to make sure on that one. Maria Hernandez May, one of the descendants of an original Latexan landowners, said they are alarmed that despite finding their manana, the military construction projects at Camp Blas still continue. So this is what's going on here. The Marine Corps is building a base out adjacent to what has been forever called NCS. The Navy changes the name of it every 10 years, but everybody knows where NCS is. And in the process of building that base, they are digging up things that have been buried literally for hundreds of years. And some of those things are human remains. We don't know if they've been buried there for hundreds of years, maybe since World War II, but archaeologists have the ability to determine that. And the Protehi Latexian folks are saying if you find human bones, you must stop building your base there. And you should do nothing with that land except let it be the continuing repository for human bones. So I understand their argument. I suspect that it's probably a relatively new argument for this part of the world. And it's certainly one that I don't think has broad currency. And I wonder how many buildings would not have proceeded forward because there were human bones buried at a building site. I don't want to condemn that thought process. I'll just leave it at saying it doesn't ring my bell, not by a long shot. Okay, then Maria Hernandez goes on to say, when this kind of disruption happens, now this is disruption. Who or what is being disrupted? I mean, once again, just concentrate on the words. Bones have been in the ground for hundreds of years. The bones have been discovered. This is disruption. If there's disruption, the disruption is to the progress of building that Marine Corps base. When this kind of disruption happens, this kind of destruction happens, we can't turn a blind eye to it. We as a community need to come together and heal, because this is really what it is dealing with, a mass level of violence, taken right out of the playbook of the left. Trigger words can be violence, right? So this is, the fact that in the process of excavation, human bones are discovered. This is a mass level of violence. Well, let me tell you this, Maria Hernandez. You're going to turn me off every time you engage in this kind of rhetoric. I don't think you much care about where I am anyhow. But, and I don't think that I'm a lone ranger on this. When you start exaggerating and overemphasizing the point that you're trying to make to the point that it becomes fantastic, whatever credibility your cause has evaporates rather quickly. So what Maria Hernandez May wants us to know is that in the process of digging and excavating at Camp Blas, when human bones are discovered It's a mass level of violence. Okay, since its establishment in 2017, they've been doing this for a long time. The group has made numerous efforts to have the military stop or at least delay the construction on sites that either have historical significance to the Chamorro people or negative effects on the island's environment. Okay, so that's Protege-Latexan. Now, as I mentioned, and the caption on the picture on the front page of the hard copy says, Hope Cristobal speaks during a Protege-Latexan community vigil and ceremony at the Chalancareta intersection in Dededo Sunday. That's yesterday. The community gathering held by the Camp Los entrance was organized to honor ancestors and unite the protection of, and I don't have the rest of the article here. So Hope Cristobal is one of the key players here. She's one of the key players in the separatist movement. She's the chairman of the Chamorro Language Commission. She's very active in this Protege-Latexan. She was one of the speakers at the gate at Camp Los yesterday. So I think we kind of owe it to our international radio listening audience to help them get to know Hope Cristobal a little bit better. So if you happen to be watching on Facebook, we have a video. If not, you'll catch the audio. This is Hope Cristobal addressing another person at a Black Lives Matter rally about a little over a year ago. So go ahead, Jose.
You're a colonizer. You're nothing but a white colonizer. That's who you are. Colonization is the same thing as slow murder. You're a murderer. That's who you are. Get off my island.
Sir, you need to go. You can't be policing people here and telling people how to protest or what to protest for. You need to go. You need to go. I'm against this. That's cool, but you cannot be policing people and telling them how to protest and what to advocate for. She has a right to go.
I'm an indigenous Chamorro. I have more rights here than you are. You came here because of the structures of colonialism, asshole. You need to leave.
You need to go.
Please.
You need to get out of here.
Please pause this.
Get out of here.
Please.
When I get a chance, go.
Thank you, Pastor. Please leave. No, you think what?
What happened?
Oh, he confronted me.
What did he
He's
say?
telling me I shouldn't be here.
Why?
I support Black Lives Matter. It's part of the colonialistic systemic racism. And I came here to support these people. He's a white man that has come here. And he continues the legacy of colonialism. He continues to fight people, individuals, my goodness. I'm a former senator. I authored the Commission on Decolonization. I'm a malo.
We are proud of you, Auntie.
Si Diyos malasi.
He said,
Well, there you are. That's Hope Cristobal. Quite an orator, isn't she? The gentleman that she was talking to committed a really unpardonable act.
Disagreed.
White.
Oh,
yeah.
That's the most heinous.
Yeah. Yeah, and she really put him in his place. So here is the face of the separatist movement, and you could see that there are others that share her view. So it's unfortunate that we didn't get some tape or some video of her at the gate to Camp Bloss yesterday. She may have done a repeat performance for us, but if you ever wondered who Hope Christobel is and who these people are, there you go. That's a sample of it. All right. Yeah, we got about 10 more minutes here before we got to head for Churchill Downs.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Afre, my name is Kiona Rivera, student at the University of Guam and recent recipient of the G is for Giving Scholarship. This holiday season, I'm encouraging our island community to support the G is for Giving campaign. Your generous contribution not only support programs at the university, but also help students like me reach our academic goals. For more information on how you can help shape the future leaders of our island, call the UOG Endowment Foundation at 671-735-2957 or visit their website at give.uog.edu.
Well, here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, the home stretch here at Tall Tales. I guess we probably won't be finding Drive-Through Jack here at Churchill Downs. He's already had his ride on the Ferris wheel. But during the short break, Jose delivered something that a couple of tailgaters brought in for me. Mike and Tracy of the Limtiaco Persuasion. And it's a coffee cup, you know. And I drink a lot of, if you know me, you know I drink a lot of coffee. So I'm always looking for coffee. And this one actually has something written on the side of it. I'll hold it up here because it's one of those neat coffee cups that's got the writing on both sides. Can you see it? For all of our international radio listening audience, this is what it says on the side of the cup. Let's go, Brandon. Very good. Thank you, Mike and Tracy. Very much appreciated. Very appropriate. And I think maybe what I'll do, Jose, is I'll just sign off every day with that phrase, let's go, Brandon. I've been doing that for a while anyhow, haven't I?
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay, so heading down the home stretch here. I'm looking at Facebook. I was wondering if... yeah, I guess probably there'll be some comments about Hope Christobel's Oscar-winning performance tomorrow. But in the meantime, I'm ready to go with more of the left versus Rittenhouse. I see somebody here in the green room trying to get in. Let me just check and see. It's William who wants to talk about the hospital. Okay, well, we'll go back to the hospital here for a little while and see what William has to say. Go ahead, William.
Hi, sir. Good afternoon there on Guam. I worked for GMH for a short time there, while I was there, and got some good insight as to the things that go on there in the medical world. And in my opinion, which doesn't really mean anything because everybody has an opinion, I don't really believe that there is going to be a new hospital built on Guam. What I believe is going to end up happening is there's going to be an economic downturn, and unfortunately, GRMC is not going to sustain itself economically, and GRMC will end up becoming the new GMH.
Well, it's happened before. That's exactly what happened to the Medical Center of the Marianas, William.
That is what I believe will happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an interesting...
I just thought I'd put that out there.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting thought. Thanks for sharing that. You're somewhere in the mainland, right, William?
Utah, Salt Lake City.
That's right. Yeah, you called on Friday, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was defending Rittenhouse, and he ended up getting acquitted on all charges.
I guess the jury must have heard what you had to say.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for calling, William.
Yes, sir. That's just I wanted to share my opinion on the thing. That's how I perceive it. That's my insight on what I think is going to end up happening now in Guam. And I do care about the people of Guam. I took care of them while I was there, and they need a new hospital. But even if it is GRMC.
Okay, that's a very interesting point. Thanks for sharing that with us, William.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, that's exactly what happened. The Catholic Church decided that our Guam Memorial Hospital was kind of falling apart. So the Bishop Flores, went in about $25 million in the hole to build a hospital called Medical Center of the Marianas. Some interesting things happened. GMH thought it ought to compete with Medical Center of the Marianas instead of complementing it. And, of course, pretty hard to compete against a subsidized government hospital. So Medical Center Marianas didn't last long. It wasn't profitable for very long. And ultimately, Phil Burton, who at one time was kind of our patron, was able to get a bill through Congress paying off the creditors of Medical Center of the Marianas with a $25 million appropriation to Guam. So we bought Medical Center of the Marianas from the Archdiocese. That allowed the Archdiocese to get out from under the debts. It allowed Archbishop Felix Berto Flores to get away from a rather large spot of bother, as it were. And we didn't take any better care of Medical Center of the Marianas than we did at Guam Memorial Hospital. The hospital where I was born back in Elkhorn, Wisconsin, still there, still being used. It's not used as a hospital anymore.
/ schoolhouse?
Well, the school where I went to kindergarten, I'll show you a picture here tomorrow, Jose. I took a picture of it. The school where I went from kindergarten through 6th grade. So it's a beautiful kind of orange brick building with a bell tower on it. And just below the bell tower is a large circle with the numbers 1887 in that circle. 1887, and they're still using that building. Not for kids anymore, they use it for office, but the building is still in pretty good shape. How does that happen? I think they probably cheat. They probably maintain the building. They don't just build it and then not maintain it, so that's not fair.
Probably better material back then, too.
Well, certainly some of the kids that went to kindergarten back in 1938 were a lot better material than what you got nowadays. There's no question about that. Okay, I want to get into the left versus Rittenhouse, but we got, 1 minute to go here? Yeah. Okay, so we'll pick up on this tomorrow. Jose and I are going to go full bore on this whole left versus Rittenhouse. The longer we get from the verdict, the more ridiculous it becomes. So here we go. Let's go, Brandon.
KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3. and 104.3 HD3.
News Alert, I'm Steve Rappaport. Authorities in the Milwaukee suburb of Waukesha now say at least 5 people were killed and more than 40 injured when an SUV sped through a barricade, slamming into a Christmas parade. Mayor Sean Riley.
I'm deeply saddened to know that so many in our community went to a parade but ended up dealing with injury and heartache. My heart goes out to all those affected by this senseless act. My heart goes out to those injured as well as to their families.
Police have a person of interest in custody, but authorities did not provide any details about the person or a possible motive. President Biden's Build Back Better plan is halfway to his desk. Fox's David Spunt.
The president celebrated the House passage, not the Senate passage, of that Build Back Better bill. This is his social spending bill. The final vote was 220 to 213. The president says this was a victory, something that the White House was waiting for a long time, although the margins were razor thin.
The margin is even thinner in the Senate, where Democrats can't afford to lose a single vote. Some moderates want the price to come down. The roughly $2 trillion measure does not have any GOP support. Health officials hope more Americans will roll up their sleeves for booster shots now that the CDC approved the extra dose of a coronavirus vaccine for all adults.
We're in a situation where there's no confusion, there's no lack of clarity, that if you've been vaccinated with a primary vaccination with an mRNA vaccine, either the Pfizer or the Moderna, 6 months or more ago, get boosted, and the same with regard to J&J. If you were vaccinated 2 months ago, get boosted.
White House Chief Medical Advisor Dr. Anthony Fauci on ABC's This Week. The Biden administration does not plan at this time to change the definition of fully vaccinated to include boosters. The Democratic governors of Connecticut and New Mexico say the definition should be modified to require boosters. America is listening to Fox News.